Hey, everybody. I'm so glad that you guys are here today to share in this just meeting of minds and place of safety and love and education. As you know, my name's Tina Hurley, the founder and the CEO of Less Leg, More Heart, which is basically a charity that helps amputees around the country and tries to provide a platform of education and inspiration and resource for folks that otherwise wouldn't have it. So this Heart to Heart is our peer virtual support platform, which is a monthly meeting that comes the second Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. Eastern. It's the same link, it's the same access, it's via Zoom, so all are welcome. And it's a place where I bring health and wellness experts to you to educate you on topics that are pertinent to the amputee community, the disability community, trauma in general, and really it kind of relates to everybody. We want to have a supportive and intimate, engaging group here, and we always do. It's a place to nurture education and to foster relationships and to really lessen our ignorance about topics that will serve us. We want to increase awareness and education about these topics so that those seeking perspective and education have a place to do that with vetted resources. And certainly whoever I bring to you is going to be top notch. You guys have already shared all the places that you're from, and just reading this chat, it's so exciting. We've got people from all over the country. We've got people from Georgia, people from Lowell, we've got people from Massachusetts. Susan, yeah, you're all the way from Atlanta, right? Yeah, that's wonderful. So really excited that you're all here with me. I just wanted to ask each of you a quick question about what one best thing has come from your most challenging times, whether it's your disability or it's just the hardest thing you've ever been through. I'll start to allow you time, and then I'll just call each of your names to tell me what one best thing has come from your most challenging times. Mine is gratitude. April, what would yours be?
Purpose.
Yes. How about Michelle, if you could unmute?
Did I unmute?
Yep.
Perseverance.
Nice one. All right. Elizabeth, I know you're driving, so if it's safe, you can unmute, but if not, don't worry about it.
Humbleness.
Say it one more time.
Humbleness.
Humility. Yep, I love that. Anthony.
I'd probably say strength.
Ooh, good one. Angel, what do you got for us? Oh, it doesn't seem like I can hear you, so you're welcome to put it in the chat if that's easier for you. What about you, Susan?
Mine was a toss-up between patience and confidence.
All good stuff. Yeah. So as we are aware, we can be tested, but the stuff that comes from those times when we push through and sort of face the fire are the most incredible tools to wield and hopefully to use to spread knowledge to other folks, which is what our speaker, April Adams, is going to be doing. She is the International Director of Orpheus Academy, which she's going to explain. She's been an emotional health coach for several years and successfully has advised hundreds of people to use this specialized system that improves emotional reactivity on the subconscious level of the mind. She specializes in the age ranges of 30 to 55, women, relationship issues, overwhelm, resentment, longing, negative childhood experiences, limiting beliefs, fears and phobias. My goodness, all of us could benefit from that, or everyone in general. And she's had a fascination with psychology. She's been a holistic practitioner since the 90s. She's authored 2 best-selling books. She's appeared on television all over, several dozen podcasts. And I had the pleasure of meeting her at a women's retreat virtually and having her on our local television show. And so I'm just so honored after the recent seminar she conducted with Less Leg, More Heart to have her here to bring this to your homes and to your, your comfortable spaces, because she really is an amazing resource. We're lucky to have her here. And our topic today is the hidden key to emotional peace. So without further ado, April, thank you for being here. I look forward to learning from you.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for being here too. I'm really just honored to have you all here and ready to tune in and listen and hopefully learn something that can change your life. So I haven't always been this positive, upbeat, open-hearted person. I, just like most people, have had my own share of emotional pain, emotional issues. And I used to be incredibly needy, negative, obsessive, just miserable. I mean, there was a point about 15 years ago where I was so obsessive about trying to fix my romantic relationship and wanting it to be a certain way, and just curled up in the fetal position on the bathroom floor, going, why does this always happen to me? And not being able to move past this issue and trying to control how my relationship was and how everything was, and having all of these expectations and just not being able to let it go. But it was that pivotal moment of going, why does this always happen to me? And then suddenly realizing, oh, I'm the common denominator here. So what is it in me that I have these needs and these fixations that people I've been in relationships with don't have, and so on? And so I set out on a journey to try to figure out what was going on in here that needed to be resolved so that I could be at peace and actually enjoy my life. So I started going to therapy and reading self-help books and studying as much as I could, and doing meditation and learning mindfulness and trying to change my mindset. And it seemed like this constant uphill sludge, like just constant trying to try this, try that, try this, try that. And I could get temporary relief from something, I could get little bits of relief from something, but nothing ever resolved the issue. So it took forever to resolve anything. And I would just be going, how many layers are there to this issue? I can't possibly have to work through another layer of this thing. Can I just dig up the whole thing instead of peeling a layer of it? And I will share with you how I finally found a way to resolve. So we'll get there, but you're seeing that there are ways to resolve, because that's why I'm here. But let's begin with how the mind works and why we tend to get blocked in the ways that we do, and why the things that we keep trying don't always get us the results that we're hoping that they do. So first and foremost, we all have a different version of reality inside our heads. So we live our lives and we have the experiences we have, and we have the parents that we have, and we have all of these things that get told to us, things that we experience. And our subconscious mind creates this model, this version of reality based on those things. So none of us is actually living in the same version of reality. We're all seeing it through our own scope and our own experience. And it can be very difficult to have deep understanding for someone else and their version of reality when you're coming from your own place of that. But the beauty of this is that much of the time, our own version of reality isn't even close to the truth of the situation. We decide things about ourselves and what we're worthy of and how things work in the world based on those experiences that are not actually related to the truth and the reality of what's going on externally. Now, to take this to another level, we have 3 different levels in our minds: the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. So we'll start with the conscious mind. That's pretty much what we're interacting with right now. You're mostly paying attention to me and listening to this or taking notes with your conscious mind. When you're planning something, when you're working, typically you're using your conscious mind to do those things. The unconscious mind takes care of your autonomic functions, your breathing, and anything that you're not consciously aware of physically in your body. And then the subconscious mind deals primarily with emotions. So the subconscious is constantly scanning for what's going on, what's happening, and trying to keep us safe really. It's recording all of the different things that are happening to us, all the different things people are saying and doing, and sort of recording a lot of those things. And it's also watching for what could harm me, what could get me, what could change things from being the way that I want them to be, and so on. And when the subconscious perceives something to be a threat, whether that's a threat to your physical well-being, your emotional well-being, or your life as you want it to be, or especially if it perceives something to be similar to something bad that's happened to you in the past, it's going to create a reaction. And so that creates this physiological response in our body. So we may have this knot in our stomach suddenly with this rush of cortisol, or we may have this heat or this intensity in our chest or throat with adrenaline happening. And these are just the nervous system and your physical body reacting to the subconscious perceiving some form of threat. So there's all these bells and whistles going off. Oddly enough, you may not even be consciously aware of what the subconscious has just picked up on. So your conscious mind might not even know why you're being triggered right now. You may be interacting with a person who reminds you of an abuser. You might, this is a crazy thing. So let's say you were witnessing a robbery in a gas station at some point. And you're really freaked out. You're standing at the end of an aisle, and there's these big orange canisters out of the side of your eye on the shelf next to you while you're watching this robbery happen. You're not consciously going, oh, I'm standing at the edge of this aisle, I'm seeing these orange things, I'm smelling whatever I'm smelling in the room. But your subconscious is taking all of it in, every nuance of it. And so someday you might be walking down the aisle in Walmart, get to the end of an aisle, and there's a bunch of orange things up here, and you may be smelling a similar smell and go into a panic attack, have no idea why you're having a panic attack in that moment, because the subconscious is just trying to protect you. But your conscious mind is going, there's nothing here threatening me. I don't know why I'm having a panic attack right now. So the subconscious typically is trying to keep us safe, is thinking it's doing the right thing. Yet, unfortunately, a lot of the time, we're reacting to things that are not actual threats as though they are threats because the subconscious is perceiving them that way. And because our ancestors did need to be on edge all the time, and they were being chased by predators, and there were people trying to take their territory. So they needed this reactivity. But now we have first world problems and we're not constantly under attack, but we react to things like somebody saying something rude on social media as though there is a predator chasing us. And that's why we need to deal with the subconscious mind if we want to move past things. So we can change our conscious mindset all we want, and we can talk ourselves down after we've been triggered about something. But unless the subconscious believes that we're safe, we're not going to be able to move past that thing long term. So we'll always be reactive in the moment until the subconscious fully understands this is not a threat. I don't need to be worried about this and fixating about this. So let me see. Yeah, so we can't just logically kind of think our way out of this. We have to get to a place where we're able to fully feel safe and believe in our safety related to particular events and situations on the subconscious level in order for all of the conscious work that we've done on ourselves to happen more easily, more effortlessly, and more consistently. I mean, you know, there's a lot of different therapies and methods out there that are great at showing you how to cope with your emotions, how to talk yourself down, how to calm your nervous system, but they don't actually address the issue on the level of the subconscious mind, where all of our in the moment knee-jerk reactions and decisions are being made. So that's why it's important to pay attention to the subconscious, and the subconscious helps to make all of that work you've done on yourself already fall into place effortlessly. Because now you don't have to constantly babysit your brain and use willpower to not think a certain way, or, just babysit your brain every second of every day. So I found that exhausting when I was trying to practice constant mindfulness. I was going, my brain wants to have that thought every second of every day. And I can't possibly sit with my brain and talk it out of that thought every second of every day for the next 10 years until it finally stops doing that. So to be able to get it to a place where I was just naturally, without even having to try, not having that thought or any reactivity to those kinds of thoughts anymore, it felt kind of miraculous, honestly. So these, and all of all of that conscious work, all of the self-help books and therapy and mindfulness and changing your mindset and positive affirmations, it's all fabulous to prepare us for this deeper work. Because if you don't understand why you would even want relief from certain things, like if you don't even understand why you would want to move past your anger at somebody and forgive them, then doing this work is almost pointless. But if you consciously understand and you want to move past and you want to forgive and you want to let go, then this just lets you go ahead and do that very quickly and easily. If you can get the subconscious to go, okay, I don't need to hold on to that anger and resentment anymore. So what happens if we don't address our issues? Maybe we have a certain trauma or we have certain patterns where we just fixate and hold on to them, and we don't do what we need to do to move past it. Whether we're suppressing those things and avoiding and doing coping mechanisms maybe that aren't super healthy, or even healthy coping mechanisms like meditating or going to yoga or getting lots of work done, or drinking, doing drugs, being on social media constantly. These are all ways that we try to push down and avoid our feelings. But on the other hand, a lot of people will fixate and dwell on and not be able to, this is kind of how I was. I would just loop on it. And every chance I got, I would fixate and just swim around in those thoughts and feelings. And neither one of those is helpful for anyone. And if you don't address them, they start to build up and it just grows and it takes over. So, if you've got all of these multiple stressors and you're either ignoring them or you're fixating on them incredibly, they're going to build into anxiety. They're going to build into panic. And if you get enough anxiety consistently enough in your body, at some point your system is going to crash and you're going to end up in depression. And then you'll be all upset because you're depressed and you can't function. And then you start to get stressed out again because you can't function and can't get anything done. So then you get back on that anxiety wheel and that builds more panic and more intensity. And then you crash again and then you're in the depression, and it just becomes this self-perpetuating cycle. And also, even if it doesn't lead to the panic anxiety cycle, it can often lead to physical health issues as well. There's a lot of research being done about how very specific health issues are correlated to very specific emotional coping patterns, and especially those that have been passed down from our family. We tend to think that physical issues that have happened in our family line come down genetically, and to some degree they do. But the bigger piece that gets passed down is how we cope emotionally with what's happening in our lives. And so we learn to cope much like our family of origin did. So if they had certain physical issues that their emotional patterns made even stronger, we are also going to continue those until we heal those patterns in ourselves. And the other thing is too, we can avoid our emotions all we want. We can come up with as many healthy coping mechanisms as we want, but those issues are still going to sneak up on us when we least expect it and when it's the least convenient for us. So, you can avoid, you can do everything to try to not feel those feelings and not pay attention to them. But life is very good at showing us where we have work to do. And those triggers are going to keep arising, and they'll show up at times when you really don't want to have to deal with them. So of course, it's always best to be able to deal with them when we have the time and energy and the proper tools to deal with them, as opposed to trying to stuff them down and avoid them and hope that they just magically go away on their own. So something that I've been noticing a lot lately, and I am so relieved about, is the popularity of trauma-informed therapy and trauma-informed information getting out there in the world. For instance, Oprah's book, What Happened to You, is this huge revelation for most people that most of our issues are actually just trauma responses. A lot of the mental health diagnoses. So you look through the DSM-5 and you look at all of these different labels that we have for people and their different mental health behaviors. And the majority of those are actually just ways that people's brains have figured out to cope with the difficult things that have happened to them in their lives. Our love languages tend to be a trauma response. If we didn't have certain needs met when we were growing up, we look to our romantic partners to try to have those needs met from them now. Our personality types are often related to our trauma responses and the difficult things that have happened. Behavioral issues like bullying have a lot to do with being a trauma response. And so seeing this and being able to look at, it's not about what's wrong with you. It's about what happened to you, and looking at everything that's wrong with us individually, but also wrong out there in the world. If you're able to look at it from the perspective of that is somebody reacting to something difficult that has happened to them, or a series of things that were difficult, we can come at it from a different perspective. And there are ways to heal and resolve trauma. So, and we're going to get into that shortly. So most of our triggers, most of our issues often started at the age of 0 to 7, because we're kind of wide open at that age. And there's a lot that goes on developmentally, and a lot of the decisions that we make about how the world works and how we think people feel about us, what we think we're worthy of, and so on, kind of gets formed in that period of time. And we're just trying to figure the world out at that point. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of development happening in the brain during that phase. So a lot of the things that hurt and bother and trigger us now can often be traced back to 0 to 7 years old, and often need to be resolved back there in order to get the peace that we crave now. For instance, I had a client who was so triggered by her boss. She just could not stand him. He drove her crazy. And, a lot of her other coworkers they weren't crazy about him, but she just really was set off by him. And so I asked her, okay, what is it about him that bothers you? What are his behaviors? What is he doing and saying? And she said, well, he's really condescending and demeaning. And I said, okay, well, who else in your life has been condescending and demeaning? Was your dad like that? Did you have exes that way? Has this been a pattern? And she said, oh yeah, my dad was like that. He treated my mom that way all the time. And, I had a couple of exes who were that way. And so those are the roots. And that is why she is so reactive to the boss, because she had this powerless experience as a child where her authority figure was condescending and demeaning. Now she's got this other authority figure who's condescending and demeaning, and it's kind of putting her back in that place of a powerless child when she's experiencing that. And so we were able to do some subconscious work with her to release not only her frustration with her boss, but her frustration with her father and her exes, and all of those experiences in her life. And she was able to then go to work in peace and stand up to her boss and be able to be non-reactive to him and his attitude when she was at work. So fantastic stuff once you can get the subconscious to stop feeling reactive. All right, so subconscious work is anything that can help create change on the level of the subconscious mind. And you have all heard of some subconscious modalities. Hypnosis, for instance, is a subconscious modality. EFT is a subconscious modality. You've seen people tapping and saying mantras and things to themselves. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that's basically speaking the subconscious mind's language. You know, even if you're not under hypnosis, it's a way to get your subconscious to sit up and pay attention, create change through visualizations and things like that. And EMDR is probably the most respected and therapeutic version of subconscious work. So all of these are available and you can look them up and you can Google or go on YouTube and type in any word or issue, any topic, and the letters EFT, and you will find a script to walk you through how to deal with that particular issue using EFT. You can probably buy hypnosis tracks for any issue similarly related to whatever topic you want to work on. However, I find that with hypnosis, EFT, EMDR, and NLP, that all of these techniques often take multiple rounds to take care of a single issue. So you can work on something that's deep in your subconscious and do a round on that, feel better in the moment, but end up maybe a month later being triggered about that same thing again, having to go back and do that same process again on that trigger. And now it's a little closer to the surface of the subconscious. And then a month later, you might be triggered again. And now you do it again. So you get it a layer closer and you have to keep going until it's finally released from the subconscious mind. So it's faster than just trying to be mindful and talking yourself down over and over again, or just sitting and feeling your feelings. But it's still something you have to do several times and are having to peel layers. So it wasn't until I came across the Orpheus tools that I found I was able to start just getting very quick results. So these are like 12-minute audio tracks. And many people find that in their first round, they get at least a 50% decrease in the intensity of their emotions around a particular topic, if not 100%. So we're either dialing down or completely resolving that particular trigger using what I call the negative emotion destroyer tracks that help to essentially convince the subconscious mind that you're safe. And the way that those tools work and why they work faster and more lastingly than the other tools is because they combine everything, like elements of everything that have been proven effective already, plus a couple of other innovations that nobody else has thought of yet, into one set of tools. So it's just, it's being able to take as many weapons as possible to war instead of just a knife. And so just being able to, attack the issue from every possible angle, convince the subconscious mind that you're safe. And so what happens physiologically, like in the brain, when we are bothered by something, like if we have a certain trigger or a certain pattern that keeps showing up in our life, basically, we have a thought or we have a trigger, and there's an emotional response that starts to just come up automatically whenever that thought or trigger arises. So trigger, emotional response. And there's these synaptic connections in the brain that connect those two things together. And what these tracks are doing is basically unplugging that danger response, that negative response, and instead plugging it into safety, plugging it into a neutral emotional response, therefore resolving it on the level of the subconscious mind, because now the subconscious believes, oh, we're safe. We don't need to freak out about this. And so when somebody has an anxiety disorder, that typically is coming from trigger, 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 trigger. There's all of these little things that have added up to create a perpetual state of anxiety. And so, yes, you can use these tools on a general feeling of feeling anxious, and it will often bring it down. But in order to get lasting relief from anxiety, we often have to address those individual, like past traumas or things that stress us out day to day that we would typically try to just stuff down and ignore. No, that's not that big a deal. I should just move on from it. But those things build up, and that's what creates that anxiety. So being able to work on those little individual things, if you're going, oh, I'm safe here, 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 maybe I'm safe overall and can relax and don't need to be constantly hypervigilant and watching for what's wrong and feeling anxious all the time. So it's about addressing whatever it is that creates that for you. So for some people, you may have just one or two major things that have happened to you that create trauma, that create negative thoughts and feelings and reactions for you. And you can use these tools to address those and just go on with your life. Where, you know, a lot of my clients like to get a total life overhaul and they want to feel better about everything. And you know, for me, I'm like, how close can I get to being trigger free in my life? You know, so anytime anything bothers me, I do some work on it because it just, you know, I feel like it's a gift almost to be triggered so that I can remove one more trigger so that I go through life feeling much more calm and at ease in general. So there's a big range of how much work people are willing to do on themselves, how much work they want to do on themselves, and the scope of the intensity levels of the things that they can or will work on. So basically, you know, what I want to say is, you know, if you think about right now, what you're most afraid of, what you're most bothered by, like what keeps you awake at night? What do you lay in bed and, you know, you can't fall asleep because it's just stuck there or you're worried about something happening? And that it always comes down to emotionally how that is going to make you feel, like if that thing happens or because that thing happened. It's not necessarily the actual event that you're worried about. It's the emotional fallout of that thing. It's feeling like I'm going to be stuck in this negative emotion. I'm going to be destroyed by this emotionally for a long time or for the rest of my life. But what I want to say here is that it doesn't have to be the case. That has been the case in the past, but that does not have to be the case. There are now tools and ways to get yourself out of that emotional suffering. And that makes me feel emotionally superpowered to know that no matter what happens in my life, I'll be able to move past it emotionally, that I'll be able to let it go and move on with my life. I may not like it. I may not have a positive opinion about whatever it is that's going on, but I can move on from it emotionally. And it doesn't have to hold me down, and I don't have to be stuck in that pattern forever. So that's what's possible. All right. So I'm sure you're wondering how to get these tools, where they exist. And I think Tina has put some links. Yeah, she put some links in the chat, and I'll share the links again at the end too. But these are through a progressive web app called Orpheus Mind Technologies. And the tools that you're looking for are called the Negative Emotion Destroyer Tracks. And it's a monthly subscription that they offer to people. So, you know, you can absolutely do subconscious work by using EFT, going to a therapist for EMDR, getting hypnosis for particular issues, doing NLP work. Those are all viable options you can check those out. You can do research on those and check those out and see how those do for you. So I'm not here to just sell you on these Orpheus tools. I don't make any money at all if you use the Orpheus app. So I'm not trying to sell anything. This is not an affiliate link. It's just, I want people to know that these tools exist and that they are available to you in order to be able to just think about the thing that's bothering you. So if you're worrying about something in the future, you play the track while you worry about the future thing. If you've had a negative event in the past, you play the track while you remember that negative event in the past and how it makes you feel. If you've had a negative series of things that are similar, you can go ahead and think about that series of that thing happening to you over and over and over again, and how tired you are of it and how worried you are it's going to happen to you forever. And you play the track while you think that negative stream of thoughts. It's basically just thinking the way your brain wants you to think about that negative thing, because the brain just likes to freak out. The brain just wants to worry. So instead of talking yourself down, instead of trying to put a positive spin on it, you are going ahead and thinking the way that your brain wants you to think while you play this track. It's convincing your subconscious mind you're safe. It's unplugging danger and plugging in safety. And you're able to move on and, have the emotional freedom that you want to be having with that. So to me, this isn't about fixing you, because you're not broken, but it's about undoing the damage life has done and letting you return to your truest self. So why don't we go to questions and stuff then?
There are so many times, I'm so glad I was muted, April, because so many times when, yes, yes, I saw Susan over there nodding along. It's just, life is messy, and it's at some point, like, something happens in life, or several things in life, where you have a white flag up, because yes, you're right, EMDR and all these other therapies are great, and I've looked into them. But life is challenging. People with disabilities may have mobility challenges that impair their ability to get to the actual appointments. They may have financial burdens that limit their ability to pay the out of pocket. If insurance even pays for a portion of it, it's still an astronomical price because it's a clinical, circumstance. So there's a lot of barriers to doing something remotely. I will say too, as a disclaimer, I saw April speak at that women's retreat, and it sounds like too good to be true, too easy to be effective, a little like, because she's so passionate, like salesy in a sense. But I have been salesy about the things I love and know too, because you can't help but go, there's the stuff that helps. And I was absolutely bewildered when I found out more about this. And Les Langmore-Hart just had a seminar with Orpheus, where we actually had some beneficiaries and folks of the organization, myself included, that were able to learn a ton more about neuroscience and psychology and the way the brain works, and also got a chance to participate with the audio tracks as a group and have testimonies like before, during, and after. And when April said there was a 50% reduction in literally a 12-minute audio track, that number was lower than the standard percentage change of everybody that was in that room. And I was bewildered. And I also don't make any money for soliciting this as a tool, but we have all had access to this because we attended the seminar for a month. And I will tell you, it's fascinating. It induces this whole brain state, which is the way that it gets past your conscious mind. And just as a student of life, like hearing a sound and tapping here, and then hearing a sound and tapping here, and then both tapping. And while it's saying these affirmations and you're thinking of this traumatic thing, it was so rapid that you don't even have a chance. It's hard to sit with your feelings. That's like a primary issue a lot of people have, is like, I don't want to feel that for 10 minutes or 12 minutes, but it keeps you so busy doing the brain work stuff by you doing actions and having to think, that by the time like halfway through the track, it's actively saying, remember that thought, remember that circumstance, remember that trigger. And you're like, I was really mad about this. And I'm thinking of the same thing, but I actually physically, like, anger doesn't feel that like it's there. I mean, I was so moved by the difference. And I was thinking about one of the hardest times of my life. They specifically said, don't do that your first time. And I was like, let's try this out. So I want to sing this from mountaintops, and I'm a huge supporter of this organization. I think it needs to be in every mental health facility and funded by the government. And like, that's why I brought this thing to you guys here today. And so if it sounds a little too good to be true, a little too easy to work, I get you, because I was thinking that same thing until I was able to try it out. And I would pay 3 times what that low affordable price is monthly for the therapeutic outcome that it gave me and everybody in that group. So I just wanted to give you guys a firsthand testimony while you thought of your questions. But does anybody have any questions for April? We're really lucky to have her brain here.
And I am putting a discount code for Orpheus to get 50% off your first month. So you can
Great.
try that out too, at a discount for your first month.
Looks like Susan's got a question. I'm just gonna, you can unmute. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay. Yes, thanks. Okay. From what you just described, because my first question was if you could just share a little bit about what the audio tracks were about, but you just said some of that, Tina.
And I'm happy to describe it a little bit more
Oh,
in depth if you'd
I
like.
just wanted to understand how it was different from EMDR, because she
Mhm.
mentioned like tapping and like this kind of brain work that sounds a little bit similar. And then the second part, in case I don't have another opportunity to ask you, I wanted to ask if you know about brain spotting.
A little bit. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm making notes so I don't forget to cover anything. Okay. So telling you a little bit more about how the tracks work will help in comparison with the EMDR and stuff like that. So there is basically suggestion to your subconscious mind in the form of this wonderful British gentleman who created this system, speaking to your subconscious mind and giving the proper suggestions to get your subconscious to realize that you're safe and can move on from the thing. And so that's going on throughout the track, but also throughout the track, you're thinking about the negative thing, whatever it is. So you're trying to hold on to your thoughts and feelings. You're trying as hard as you can to hold on to that negative thought, trying as hard as you can to hold on to that negative feeling. It gets harder and harder to do that throughout the course of the track. And there are these 3 sounds played at random. And you have to basically, when you hear one of them, you tap your right hand. When you hear a different one, you tap your left. And then there's a third sound that you tap both hands. So you're so busy going, am I tapping to the right thing at the right time? He's able to speak to the subconscious mind.
Okay.
So that's kind of how he's able to have that conversation with the subconscious, because you're so busy doing all of this other stuff that he can have this kind of background conversation going on. But also, as you're aware, all of that tapping creates that whole brain state that EMDR tends to create. So that's where the similarities kind of begin and end. The issue with EMDR often is that there isn't any suggestion to the subconscious mind about what to do with that trauma anymore afterwards. So the brain's kind of left to its own devices to figure out what to do with it, and when to get rid of it, where to store it, and if it's going to come back, and so on. Where this is getting very clear instructions about exactly where you're going to store it, what you're going to do with it, how you're going to perceive it, and so on. I also find that with EMDR, it often takes many, many times of having to think about a problem for maybe 40 minutes at a time, and having to be in a therapist's office to do so, and often having to do that maybe 10 times before that issue is resolved. And this often you can do that in under 20 minutes using these tools, because it's using so many different elements. Not to mention that the guy who created this used to be a computer programmer. And he figured out that there were a lot of similarities between how the human brain and how a computer processes language patterns and information. And so a lot of the language and the patterns and the timing is built around that understanding. So there's a lot of different elements that go into it, and every single second of these tracks is built to get the best possible result and essentially just very easily slip that change from this is dangerous to this is safe.
That's so fascinating, especially the part about the computer programming. It makes me sort of feel like there's even more science behind it.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of amazing. Yeah. And then you asked about brain spotting. So oddly, I just taught this yesterday with the creator of these tools to a university in the UK who are going to be using this on their student body. And someone in that group just asked about brain spotting as well. And I'm somewhat familiar with brain spotting. I know that it has to do with thinking about a certain memory and like looking around in your brain and figuring out like where that's located in your brain and doing some work on that. As far as I know, this is not related to that. However, I could see there being some level of something like this going on, but there is no eye movement or anything associated with the track itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else? Any questions? All right. Well, that was a lot of information. And as always, I feel like, oh, Michelle's got
I
something.
think Michelle had her
Yeah, go ahead.
hand up.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Yep.
So I found it interesting that you said most of our issues happen between the ages of birth and 7 years old. So I had a lot of childhood trauma, some that I remember and some that I do not. How do I get through the part that I can't remember?
Mm.
Yeah, and that's a really good and common question. It's tricky. However, I find that with most people, they have patterns that kept showing up over and over again throughout their lives. So, you know, you often use having your feelings dismissed as a common theme that a lot of people may have. So you may notice that when someone dismisses your feelings now as an adult, it really sets you off. And you just get really worked up when someone dismisses your feelings. So typically to use this track on something like that, I would start with getting worked up about how effing tired you are of people dismissing your feelings now and how it feels when that's happening, but also acknowledging people have been dismissing my feelings throughout my life. Like my parents kept dismissing my feelings. They didn't let me have my own thoughts, opinions, feelings. And I'm sure that was going on probably since I was a toddler. And then my sister dismissed my feelings and my husband dismisses my feeling. And so you're just kind of acknowledging this pattern of this happening over and over again. So you don't have to necessarily have a specific pivotal memory of one particular event of the thing happening. It's more about acknowledging this has been happening to me my entire life. And here's a few pivotal examples that I can think of, but I know this has been something that's happened to me over and over again. And a lot of times, if your parents treated you a certain way when you were 7, 8, 9, 10, chances are they treated you that way when you were 0 through 7 as well. So that can be something that's acknowledged. The more clear memories that you do have, or even stories that you know about, the better. I mean, it does make it easier to kind of do that work and go root finding. But there are plenty of people, and honestly, the majority of people who had traumatic childhoods have hardly any memory of their childhoods because their brains protected them from those things.
Yeah.
The beauty of this work is that it kind of loosens up the neurons in your brain. And as you're doing this work, a lot of times the root memories of the things that you're needing to work on, if you're working on a particular trigger or particular situation, and you're thinking of some examples that you do know about and can remember more recently, suddenly a certain memory will pop into your head and you go, oh, yeah, that's related to this too. And you just start including that in with the other things. So it allows for your brain to start making those connections of, okay, this issue is related to this event, this event, this event, this event. And it's detaching the emotional response from all of those different events so that now that's not a trigger any longer.
Thank you. That clears it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's even more complex than all of that, but that's a good starting point.
Well, April, I am just so grateful for you being here, but I do have one last question for you. What inspires you to continue with all the things that you're doing with like such passion, as if the things have happened to you today, the charge is there for you today? Like what is that inspirational source for you?
Since I started working with these tools, it's really just been, I need people to know about this. I need for the world to be able to have access to this stuff and to know that we're not stuck anymore. So that's what I want everyone in the world to have, is just the knowledge that you don't have to be stuck in those negative feelings.
I'm so grateful that I came across your path, and that you've been willing on several occasions to donate your time and your energy and your knowledge and your heart to our organization, to me. I'm really excited for this to disseminate and for more people to find you as a resource. And, I would encourage everybody here to look into those links. I did drop a bit of information into the chat, so you all can just refer to that before you close out. But thank you again, April, for sharing. There's so many people that need this on so many levels, but especially folks that have gone through disability, especially after a trauma. I mean, there are so many triggers that even just like the whiteness of a hospital, and then you walk into a place or a house that's all white. I mean, there's just, it's nonstop. And so being able to excavate that trauma in order to decrease the bombardment throughout the day that occurs just a beautiful opportunity. And whether people find success or don't, and I think that they will, feeling like at least you have an option of something to try, rather than just having to accept that this fragmented reactive state of less than optimal mental health is your normal, and you just have to deal with it. There's a lot of hope in that. And for folks that feel otherwise hopeless because they don't have the resources to get to therapy, or they've tried all the different things and it doesn't work, or whatever those barriers are, that hope grows into motivation and positive self-care. And it's like the catalyst to a lot of positive changes in people's lives. So I'm just so grateful for the work you guys are doing. I can't wait until this blows up and we can go, we were there in the beginning of this takeover. So anyway, thank you. And to everybody
Yes.
that's here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to everybody here, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
April.
I hope to see everybody next month. Please look at April's website. She's got the most amazing social media content as well. So you can find her social media link on our Instagram page. You can link it directly. It's April Adams, emotional coach, I believe, right?
April Adams, emotion coach. Yeah.
Emotion coach with periods between it. But I love that account and follow it literally daily. And I'm like, that's relatable. Oh, that's relatable. Like 100% of the content. I'm like, how does she know that is something I need today? So anyway, not to keep you all and to be respectful of your time. Thank you all for being here. April, thank you for being here. And until next time, as we always say, make sure to put your best foot forward, everybody. Oh, we got to do the heart. You know what? Wait, Susan, you need to be in our operations, because you just in the right direction. That's right. I said to everybody, we're going to take a screenshot, and then thank goodness for you all keeping me in line. Let's just change the screen here. Okay, half hearts up.
Oh, half heart.
You can give me your whole heart if you want to. Angel, give me some heart, man. I don't see fingertips there. Oh, it's coming. It's here. There it is. 3, 2, fun. I got it. Thanks, Susan. All right, guys, have a wonderful night. Best foot forward, and I hope to see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, April.